What was your favorite part about making this painting?
No, nothing. I'm sorry. I don't, maybe it's not a good question to start with. I feel like people should say, like, oh, I was so excited to blah, 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 blah. But honestly, the painting came from a kind of a place of longing for home, which is, and this is another painting where I was doing it in the cold, like in the dead of winter, in the cold, and going out to film it at sunrise because the house that I was painting this at, the people were really nice and let me use their property and stuff. But to get this, like the quality of lighting that I know it could be sunset, but it's actually sunrise, and yeah, but it was so cold and so windy and so cold. All these winter paintings being outside,
Well, this is one of my favorite paintings.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
It reminds me of Maine.
Yeah.
Winter in Maine, and it's got a very storybook feel.
Yeah.
The guy trudging through the cold to his warm home.
Yeah.
So I feel like you really captured the essence of the painting that you just...
Yeah, right. I know. I was listening to, oh gosh, what's that? The Creative Act, that new, I think it's Rick Rubin's book. He had this great quote in there where he said, like, it doesn't matter whether the work of art comes from like excitement or pleasure or suffering, or whether you're angry when you're making it or joyful when you're making it, that like that all of those emotions are just like energy, right? And that the output can be, the output in terms of somebody else's experience of it can be completely unrelated to the energy that you use to make it at the time. So I think that's interesting, that you feel that kind of sense of warmth and Maine and storybook, but for me it was like, and
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because you often talk about infusing the painting with a certain quality of energy.
Right.
And yet this is an example of
right
how it can be the opposite, or...
Right.
I mean, perhaps that quality of energy is definitely in this painting.
The longing for home.
But it's almost the theme of it. It works for it.
Right. I mean, I think sometimes a great work of art doesn't need a particular quality of energy from the artist. I think sometimes it just needs a particular intensity of energy from the artist, like a particular pitch of intensity. And in one avenue or another, I feel like I've always been able to tap into that.
What home were you longing for?
I had collectors who wanted to buy every painting that I made for several years, and they wanted a certain amount of paintings in that time, and I thought I could paint that fast. Basically, I thought I could paint as fast as would be required for me to fulfill that deal, but I wasn't, because partly my methods and my standards were too high, and no matter how much like energy I poured into the process, what was required from me in terms of like working from life and learning to master my craft of working from life, like, and learning to try and meet my own standards on that schedule was just too aggressive, and I felt overburdened by the process, and also a little bit disillusioned, because when I first started painting when I got out of college and was contracted by them, it was like the greatest thing in the world. These collectors are going to buy every painting that you make, and so it's like, what artist wouldn't be amazingly excited about the prospect of that and think like, wow, I'm set for life. I'm like, obviously I'm meant for the stars. Like, you know, there's no other way to say it. In my mind, I think of like the tarot card, the Fool, you know, where he's starting out on a new journey, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And he doesn't know how much he doesn't know that he doesn't know. And so, so much of that journey has been such an intense learning process of like challenge and also like just, and so at the time that I made this painting, it was just feeling extremely like overwhelmed and knowing that, you know, I couldn't create as fast as I wanted to create. And I think when you're under, you know, a kind of pressure that is like dissolving your illusions, you know, it's really common to long for home, because that's where you're in this, that, because home is like the ultimate known, and safety and family and good food and just like, you know, it's like the Shire, you know, if you're familiar with The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. So it's like that's where I wanted to be. So and so the painting was an attempt to make a kind of a like a poetic interpretation of how I was feeling, you know, like a dream, a scene that represents an inner experience.
Well, I think you did a good job with that.
Thanks.